I was in Washington together with the team, and we've been working with NASA for a fair amount of time. There is some restrictions about what I can say and not say, right? But I was there very particularly to do something called a blockchain symposium.
Hey guys, what's going on? Paul here. Welcome back to another Cardano video. And today I'm sitting down with Frederick Gregard again from the Cardano Foundation. We've had a few podcasts before, so it was time for a catch up to see what they've been up to lately, what are some of the latest things CF have been at, and the Cardano Summit is happening 3 weeks from recording today, I think, actually. So we'll get on to that, talk a bit about it, and see where the conversation takes us. But Frederick, thanks very much, as always, for coming on and giving us your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you for supporting blockchain.
No problem. Look, I'm going to presume anyone watching this knows what the Cardano Foundation is, so we'll skip that bit and I can link older interviews that we've done down below. But Cardano turned 7 within the last week. I think there was different dates signifying different parts of that. But for yourself, the 7 years, what are some of the highlights of that? It was a long journey going through that, but what's some of the highlights for yourself?
Well, 2 days ago, I turned 4 years in Cardano. That means I've been working for the Cardano Foundation for 4 years. Now, I did work a little bit with Cardano before that, but as I say, I've been full-time Cardano for 4 years. So that's definitely a highlight. Yeah, so yesterday, actually, I participated in the Ethereum Foundation 10 years anniversary. So I was together with Charles, of course, and Mihai and some of the early founders, right? And it was sort of fun to go through sort of these initiation steps, right? Around, what started Crypto Valley and Blockchain Nation, and also sort of start thinking about what's different between the Ethereum ecosystem and the Cardano ecosystem. Because I think Charles said it the best, right? Sometimes you know people better if you compete against them, right? Because then you sort of, you measure yourself up against another ecosystem, right? And I think it's been really, really cool and fascinating to see how far Ethereum has gotten. But when you look at how far Cardano has gotten in these years, is mind-blowing, right? So when I started 4 years ago, we just started with decentralization of block production. So, really adding external stake pool operators to it. But there was no smart contracting. There was no native assets. There was no metadata protocols and standards. It was very limited what you could actually do with Cardano. And look and behold today, right? We have a full A to Z blockchain who never goes down, right? Operational resilience is at the heart of what we do. Formal verifications and proofs. We've done beautiful things with, to prove that even companies like the Dubai police and, DEXs and other things, all that big spectrum can work on the Cardano blockchain. We have multiple implementations of assets, from native assets to smart contracts. We have, diversification in language models, so you can do things in Java and Python and TypeScript and things on Cardano right now. We're even working on client diversification with a Rust node next to the Haskell node, and IoT is working on putting formal specification up in a language called Agda. Scalability is no longer an issue, right? It will always sort of be an issue due to the way the architecture of blockchain, right? But with isomorphic state channels with Hydra and Hydra multiple heads, I think you've done a fantastic show about that already, right? So that's working. We have a strong identity solution, actually multiple identity solutions. But what we've been working on with the self SSI wallet from the Cardano Foundation is really interesting, because it proves that these LEI numbers, they work, right? But also that we can use the carry and the ACDC standard. So this is basically what guards 80% in terms of value of all global trade, not just financial, but global trade is under this system. And that we are interoperable with that, but you can still also maintain your own identity in that wallet. So you can have something as high as a interbank identity scheme together with your own, set of identities, which manage you as a person, you as a stake pool operator, etc. I think that's just magnificent. And going into the Cardano Summit, you can actually use this system as a part of the voting. So really big shout out to the team who made that possible. So it's really cool. And now on top of that, we have midnight coming in the horizon, which basically means that not only will we be able to think about proofs on Cardano, right? So that's what Chang 1 really brought us, right? So this ability that we can do that, but we can also will have in the future a connectivity layer through partner chains where we can have original CK rollups and do the private of the business, right? And that's you don't actually need much more than this, right? Then you can do nearly all the use cases we've been dreaming of for the last 10 years. So before we were always thinking about why do we only have algorithmic oracles and it's not enough and all those things? Well, it's because we didn't have a strong identity solution. Because if you don't have a strong identity solution, when the bounty gets big enough, you have a man in the middle attack, right? Think Terra Luna, right? It's not an identity problem there, but it's the bounty. I'm looking at the incentives of why to do when do you attack something, right? And with strong identity, you suddenly have the ability to do not just cross-chain oracles at large, but you can now take centralized data from Reuters and Bloomberg or from, NASA. So basically environmental data in the petadata size and put that in and get that verified through the blockchain into a smart legal contract. And many countries on this journey have changed the legal framework, such as Switzerland, that you don't need to have a physical signature, right, to be legally binding, but now they accept digital signatures, which means that you suddenly start for the first time to have end-to-end processes of smart legal contracts, which is really amazing. And on top of that, then you have these BLS signatures we quickly spoke about, which allows you to do this private verification layer, which means that not everything has to be public from a data point on the chain, right? And then interoperability, and then you really see the road for 1 billion people. So what was a dream with Charles and a whiteboard is no longer a dream, but is actually there now. And now I think us as a community, our job is really to start talking about that in a way people understand it, so they can articulate the value proposition of a true blockchain, regardless of the use case, and start onboarding people.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really good highlights there, and a few things you touched on that I'll come back to in a few minutes. The identity one, it's something that's growing all the time, and maybe we could set up a separate podcast with some of the team that's working on that to talk about it. I know people still reference Atala Prism as the main identity for Cardano, but things have shifted over the last few years with that, and yourselves, you've built your own solution there, so that probably could be a good podcast on its own, looking into that potential use cases where Cardano is looking itself too.
Yeah, I think what's important to think about with this is that this is not about one identity solution, right? This is about having a range of different identity solutions, ranging from what we have with Georgian wine with a simple verified credential or Audit, into very complex solutions where you have a trust anchor who potentially might be a nation state or even an algorithmic issuer, right? Who basically verifies under a global standard a type of identity. And in this case, when we use what's called the VLEI, it actually also has the first layers of quantum security, and you can do it on an agency model. And your ability to, as a person in a Web3 aspect, to have a wallet where you have multiple identity types, depending if you're interacting with a DEX, or depending if you're interacting with your children's school, or if you are, interacting with, as a person employed in a large organization who needs to verify, authenticate something, or need to sign something, like, X out of N, right? In a multi-sig format. I think that's really the key, that you can basically hold that in a type of identity wallet, which basically allows you to use these different standards. And I'm very happy to do a bespoke podcast with some of the specialists about that on a future level. But I think this is really one of the keys. And Atala Prism can be managed into this wallet as well, right? So your Atala Prism DITs can live in this wallet as well, right?
Okay, yeah, I think we could keep going down that rabbit hole now, but I have a lot of other things to cover today. But it's definitely one I'd be interested in looking more at, because I think it is a really good use case for blockchain, potentially for parts of Cardano in the future as well, that you don't have to keep firing out your private information every time you need to KYC or you need to prove who you are, that if you can sign it, your wallet, people get enough to understand who you are without having to actually get your physical documents. So in terms of Where do you see Cardano's fit in the bigger blockchain space? Like there's so many different blockchains, some concentrate on different areas, but where do you see Cardano's fit in the long term?
I think that the brand Cardano will keep increasing, right? And at a certain time, it will start decreasing. It will not decrease like other brands do because you don't use it. It will decrease because it becomes a part of an infrastructure where you have applications and you get value from it, but you actually don't even know it's Cardano. I mean, most people don't know who their underlying, internet service provider is, ISP, who actually allows your telco company to give you internet, right? They don't understand the actual plumbing underneath, but we benefit from that every single day. So I think what you're going to see is that there will be multiple blockchains. Some of them will be extremely specialized. What Cardano does really, really well is governance, decentralization, this anchor points into layer twos. So what you probably will see is some of these blockchains will simply be layer twos on Cardano, like we've kind of seen on Ethereum. And we will see sort of a consolidation of blockchains, but it will be in plural, right? You will see multiple blockchains. And the real game becomes when you really start using this interoperability through identity, through real oracles, not just algorithmic oracles, but to the power of the let's call it the Web 2 in lack of a better word, but the data layer we work with every single day outside the internet and inside the internet in a legal format and doing real smart legal contracts and escrows and stuff like that. And all of that is available. And you can see, if you saw the education, we're just rolling out an icon at the moment. I don't know if you've already seen that, right? We roll out an icon educational piece, right? It's so easy to do, right? But you need the identity layer to basically break out of the bubble of the platforms, because today all these blockchains are isolated platforms, and most of them look at identity as a super app on a platform. And this is not a platform play, right? This is a world social systems play. And therefore I think that what you're going to see is more and more organization is going to wake up and say, hey, you know what, formal verifications, scientific proofs, a blockchain who doesn't go down, a fantastic community with over 3,000 stake pool operators who gets up in the middle of the night and protects the chain and is ready to update it with partner chains and other things. Well, that's a type of infrastructure which we just cannot afford to pay for ourselves, and it has superior qualities compared to the security architecture we're working in today. So as we move further along the journey towards quantum computing in 2035 potentially, and real use cases around AI, you will see that blockchain become one of the foundational layers for that, and Cardano is one of the best positioned to do that, even though we are fairly small compared to maybe an Ethereum. But you will see much more interoperability between Ethereum and us also going forward.
Yeah, I think we need to get to the stage for new people coming into crypto that they don't even know they're using blockchain to a degree. They can learn later on, but we need to make it that easy for people coming in that they don't have to start learning what every chain is and all the nuances of each one, and just make a simple process for them. And when you have a solid infrastructure underneath that, like Cardano, then I think that's where it really can shine. With the Cardano Foundation, you go out doing different things. One that you briefly mentioned the name and referenced something else, NASA, earlier on. It caught a bit of attention across social media with it being NASA. And you do talks like that. But do you want to talk a bit about that on NASA and what other kind of stuff that the foundation has been up to?
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, I mean, I'm just one person out of 110 people, right? So I mean, there's so much going on in the foundation at all times, right? But yeah, I think what you're alluding to is last week I was in Washington together with the team, and we've been working with NASA for a fair amount of time. There is some restrictions about what I can say and not say, right? But I was there very particularly to do something called a blockchain symposium, which was anchored under the chair of AI at the Goddard Space Flight Center. So there's 10,000 people there, and we were doing a whole day training of space engineers, and they have an internal system where they can ask for an innovation grant to get time to dig into new technologies and other things to optimizes the target operating model for like the Roman Space Telescope or rocket and other things was on their program. And that was just an amazing experience be at NASA, of course, right? And also to speak to the brilliant engineers who are able to deal with risk, who basically sends us up in a hard vacuum, right? It's very hard to sort of explain what that might feel like without actually trying it. And we basically started out the day with sort of really high level, what's Cardano, what's a blockchain, why does it matter? And as the day sort of prolonged, we went deeper and deeper into the fabric of Cardano, using really strong use cases like the hoodie. If you haven't seen it yet, we have a hoodie in the Cardano merch store. And what really, caught the attention of the people there was this patch here, right? It sort of looks like a star system, right? But it's of course the logo of Cardano. And beneath that, there's a passive radio beacon. And we spoke about the Georgian wine case before, we spoke about track and trace before, but what's really interesting about particular this hoodie, which you can get in our merch store, is that when you scan that with your phone, even in a managed environment where your phone is managed by your employer, this worked really well with NASA, right? They were able to see that this is a black hoodie, and it was verifying on the Cardano blockchain. And that means that suddenly they were able to understand, even though they have not been in a Web3 interface and they work with physical items, right? I mean, think about it, they have very bespoke iron or aluminium things who need to fit together, and they have to be tested in 2 different testing facilities and have certainty that they have the same results before it goes up into a critical mission, right? But we were actually able to use something like this hoodie to explain how the blockchain can track non-fungibilities of physical assets from a vendor all the way through their testing facilities and up into space. And those kind of aha moments is really what stands out for me, right? And then, one of our engineers, Mikhail, he was then showing live, which is always a bit tricky when you do that, right? He was showing live how that actually works in a bespoke environment on Cardano. So we were actually doing a live demo, including building transactions and tracking assets in a track and trace solution in real time. And as you can imagine, doing that in a big room in front of some of the brightest people, you get a bit of a heart bump, right? Because even Google or other people don't do live presentations like that. And I think that fact that we can actually do that, even though you have to wait a bit until the block is settled and so on, is just so amazing, because this is the trust we have in Cardano, right? That it just keeps signing blocks again and again, right? It doesn't go down. And that's also one of the things which NASA had paid attention to, not just the rigorous scientific peer-reviewed research, but the fact of the operational resilience. So I think that's what I can say about that. I did do a LinkedIn post and a few other things, and I'm really fingers crossed. But I think there's a good chance that you get an update. You get an update at the summit about from themselves of what we're doing there. The other part is I also went to Grant Thornton, which is, I believe, the 5th largest accounting firm, where I also did, it was only a 3-hour speech, where again, we're trying to sort of bridge the knowledge from professional accountants, IT auditors, and so on, to what does the blockchain mean for the clients, because they have clients who use the blockchain today, but also what does it mean for the industry. So we're looking at, how will their industry, how will their practical work change? And in order to explore that, they need to understand the accounting model of blockchains, which is, I guess, one of the things you tried really well, Paul, and actually successful to explain to people the difference between the account-based and UTXO-based and extended UTXO, and why that matters, right? And then you can move into triple bookkeeping, and you can think about, instead of doing spot checks, if I have an architectural check of a business model, we can actually turn everybody, every shareholder and stakeholder, we can turn them into an auditor. And the fact, if you can do that, you suddenly lower the cost of transparency to a level where not everybody needs to be an auditor, but if you have an interest in a company, well, you can go exploring that, right? And you can go exploring the balance sheet, and you can start figuring out if that company aligns not just to your investment goals, but also to your ethical values or into other things. And you can start maybe using large language models and neural networks to grind the data, right? Because some of that data will not be public, but you will have a data footprint. When you have a data footprint, you can work on it, right? And I think that gives us a complete new way of getting transparency into companies who has a footprint into a community or into an ecosystem we care about.
Okay, yeah, it's going back over that. It's great to hear that the NASA talk was so much focused towards Cardano. I was wondering, was it just a general blockchain? But it's great to hear that potentially we hear something about that later on. With Grant Thornton as well. Again, great to see the Cardano Foundation interacting with bodies of such size and could potentially have such influence on where blockchain is accepted in the longer term. But you mentioned the summit there as well. So that's coming up in 3 weeks' time. So there's a lot of different entities. One that piqued my interest as well, NASA, definitely will be something that I'm looking out for now. But Binance will be there. They're now one of the sponsors. They will be speaking there. There's always interest in, I think we touched on it the last time we talked too, about listings for Binance and that. So it's great to see entities like that taking notice of the summit and actually making an effort to come out to it. So what can people expect from the summit this year?
Well, I think you can expect a lot, and I hope you do expect a lot, because if you're coming from abroad and you're traveling to Dubai, it has to be worth your time, right? I think there's about 140 speakers, which is a lot in 2 days. So you definitely have to pick your battles. You're going to get speakers as Dr. Marwan Al-Saruni, which basically is the CEO of the Dubai Blockchain Center. And for those of you who don't know, he was there last year as well. He basically is the one who had the vision of Web3 enabled UAE. So that the fact that they actually have identity stored on a blockchain layer in Dubai is coming out of his hand. So, having him there coming again because he thinks it's such a special event. He actually thought that there was the most special blockchain event held last year is big credits. And as you said, Ricard Teng, the new CEO he's not that new anymore, but the CEO of Binance, I think is also one of the things the community have asked a lot for, because Binance is a huge player, right? And they have a big market size. And I think a lot of people really want to speak to Binance and want to hear what they have to say. And, how do we actually get listed on Binance, and, what's the access restrictions? What can we do there, right? So having the Binance team on the ground, I think is definitely going to be amazing. And you said also earlier, what's the Cardano Foundation doing, right? Well, we actually just released the Rosetta Java version 1.0. So this is super nerdy, but it's very exciting, right? So Binance actually runs in a specific architecture where they uses the old Rosetta version, which was done in TypeScript. And it could take them 5 to 8 minutes to do a crypto out transfer, because you needed to reconcile the UTXOs and be sure that you had the right account balance. And we just released that to Binance and other exchanges, but Binance uses that now. And now we are into 500 milliseconds to do that. So it's one of the things the foundation also do is to maintain tooling for exchanges and dApp developers to do that. So we continue to try and ensure that the total cost of ownership for exchanges to manage Cardano and the native asset ADA, but also the other native assets on Cardano becomes as fluent and as low as possible. So we become as attractive for exchanges on that side as well. Then Yat Siu, which is the chairman of Animoca Brands, one of the largest Web3 gaming conglomerates in the world. And I think he's an incredible, fascinating character, and the way he built up that business is super interesting. Nikhil Yoshi from Imurko, of course. Yeah, that's going to be a lot of speakers. I'm also very interested in the builders stage. Because, not only is going to be 10 amazing projects who's going to present from Cardano, and what I heard last year was really rocked my soul. I was one of the judges, so I didn't really see the faces behind me, is I heard really large organizations like Petrobras and others. They were really amazed about how mature the Cardano teams are, right? So when I'm speaking about Cardano teams, it's not the IOG teams and the Imurko teams and the Cardano Foundation teams. There's you who is building on Cardano, how amazing technology you have, and the big problems you're solving. And I think that's going to be really interesting. And there, one of the main sponsors is LCX, which is actually a very friendly exchange of Cardano. And I think they already have around five native tokens listed. And I think they're going to do an announcement about also how do you get, how as a Cardano project you get more listings there. So definitely, see if you can get to the builder stage and to the Cardano Summit and hit up the team from Monty and the team from LCX. I think that's definitely a good thing. Then of course there's going to be some some deep down tech chat. There's going to be a lot of money in the room from VCs and banks. From Julius Baer to UBS to traditional players. And I think that's what's interesting. You have this really nice mix of people who don't necessarily work 100% in Web3, coming there to get inspiration and speak to the people who live there 100%. And then you have the VC and the investment side on the side as well. And then you get this really magical part where you can really, close your teams and, get opportunities and do business together and go out. I mean, my goal is that when you spend 2 days there, you feel like you've been a year in blockchain, right? This should be the amount of knowledge you should be able to gain. So I really hope you get your sleep and enjoy the content, huh?
Yeah, I'm already thinking that there's no way I'll be able to attend all the different talks that I want to when I'll be out there this year. I didn't make it last year, so I'm looking forward to getting there, talking to people. It's hard to be talking to people in person and the different connections you can make and potential partnerships and stuff like that. So I'll be hopefully interviewing lots of the builders that are there and talking to them to be able to put stuff out here on the channel. But for people who can't be there in person, there are virtual events as well. Will most of the talks be recorded, or can people, I'm thinking even myself, I won't get to see them all. Is there a way to watch some of them back after?
Yeah, there will be a lot of it will be recorded. And remember, if you can't get to UAE for whatever reason, there's going to be around 20 community events, plus minus a week or two before the summit. And there will be one around in 20 different countries, basically, right? So if you don't have the opportunity to go all the way, you can still go to a physical event somewhere. And if you can't do that, then there will still be recordings of most of the content.
Okay, and for anyone that hasn't booked tickets or anything yet, you actually gave me a code just before we started for people who still want to book, which I think is 60% off, which is CDS24 Fred. And I will put that up on the screen here for people to be able to see it afterwards. And that is 60%, is it?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So I have a discount code. My team was super happy to give it to me. So here it is, Paul, for all of your listeners. So there's a 60% opportunity. The reason why we're doing that just a few weeks before is because we heard that there is one or two events who got canceled for whatever reasons in the area. And, we do still have some, it's a big room, right? So we still have a bit of place. So why not fill it up and let the world know about Cardano?
Yeah, the more people that can come in and hear about it, the better. And are you expecting much presence from projects building on Cardano this year with either booths or there as speakers? And
Yeah. No, this is definitely the case. So one of the things I'm looking very much forward to is we're going to have I can't remember the real word. It's sort of like, think about like an avenue if you walk into Chinatown, right? And you have all these shops, which is really bustling with really all the colors and taste and stuff like that. So we're going to have a similar experience where you're going to have multiple types of different projects walking down that street, who's going to basically interact with you, talk to you, be able to show tech from SAT, who did the Dubai thing, to Amina Bank and a Swiss bank, you name it. There's going to be a lot of that. And on top of that, a lot of them is going to be on stage as well, and a lot is going to be pitching. I think there's going to be a really fair amount of builders on top of blockchain in general, and specifically Cardano.
Okay, it's good. Yeah, it's good that I know some of the speakers you mentioned will be looking at a cross-chain aspect too, which I think is always good. We see lately a lot of projects looking at Bitcoin and what can be done between Bitcoin and Cardano. There's some interesting things coming out there from a few different projects. But moving on then to kind of summarize things where we are with the Cardano Foundation, do you look at the roadmap of Cardano now or get involved in the voting, things like scalability or governance or anything like that? Where does the foundation sit with that? And do you participate in that?
Yeah, we do, right? So we've been more or less for at least the last year been participating in multiple votes. We even sort of constructed some of them, right? The SPO vote we constructed and ensured that that could be happen, right? And we are part of Intersect, right? We joined Intersect, I think 3-4 weeks ago, right? As an enterprise member. We already were present in many of the committees and subgroups, of course, right? So we're definitely a part of, the future Cardano outlook and discussions, including budgeting, including we are hosting multiple of the constitutional workshops, but the one we are completely hosting is the one in Austria, which I think is around the 12th or 13th this week, so in 2 weeks' time, and with Nicolas Cerny there, right? And we think this is very important. Everybody who are in Cardano now should participate in Cardano to the best of their ability, and I think we have a duty to do so just by the fact that we have over 100 people who work full-time there. We are also going to release more educational content, because one thing is what is our view, so we'll be more vocal about the direction, what we think is a good direction for Cardano, but we're also going to release more data sets and more ways to cut the data, which will allow people to form their own view. And that's probably going to be one of the more difficult parts, right? So on one hand, having a view and also delegating to D-reps or being a D-rep, but the other part is how do we also ensure that people have access and an understanding of how to interpret data without actually putting my view or the foundation's view down on their head. And I think that's going to be one of the more interesting parts to travel going forward.
Yeah, I think like that, there's two views as well, looking in the short term and looking at the long term. And when you compare it to other blockchains, sometimes we might rush to try and keep up with them in the short term, but there's a lot of different perspectives have to be taken into account. So for the Cardano Foundation, what can we expect kind of in the next 6 months, or what are you guys looking at for the next 6 months? I suppose the next month obviously is the Cardano Summit, and then need a bit of downtime after that. But towards the end of the year and into early next year, what's CF looking at?
Well, I don't think there's going to be any downtime, right? So we have the Chang2 hard fork coming up, right? I don't think the official date has been announced yet, right? But the forecasting right now is just before Christmas. And that means that we have a lot of dApps, DEXs, and exchanges who needs to be ready for that. We also participate as a contributor to some of those repos, right? We do some of the monitoring around that. So it's going to be a lot of work there, right? Second to that, we have the constitution, not only the interim constitution, we have to see if there's going to be more activity in terms of governance actions and other things. We are an ICC member. Plus, the formation of a new constitution is going to be one of the really, really strong trigger points. And we're obviously going to be in Argentina as well to do that, which is actually just after the summit. And there's a lot of workshops to be had and contributed to getting into Argentina as well. Then there's the budgeting, which is really kicking off sort of start November or something like that. I know the budgeting committee has already been formed. We are participating in that as well. But as you can see in the interim constitution, the budgeting process and ensuring that that we get to a ratified budget is extremely important in order to do treasury withdrawals, to keep Catalyst and other programs out there. So there's definitely a lot of work needed to do there, including also modeling of protocol parameters and or supply and demand side of ADA. When you change the tokenomics model, you don't really change it, right? But you are adding to the tokenomics model as we see it going on today. On top of that, there's the day-to-day work in the community team around marketing, around business development, finding flagship projects. We have a couple of let's say Builder Fest and hackathons and other things in our sleeve. We would like to get some dates on for the calendar for next year. So it's it's definitely going to be very, very busy. The front end of the identity layer, we would like to finalize. So right now, the front end of the identity layer for the identity wallet is finished for a person, but for the agency model, so how you run a large enterprise, on that, only the back end is actually finished, which is sufficient that you can run it. But we'd like to get to a nice front end as well. So it'd be easier for people in the community to introduce that in their local workplace, right? So if you're not full-time Cardano already and you work in a company, you can just bring up your phone and say, hey, wouldn't it be great if we had like a quantum secure way of signing documents and authenticating policies and processes. And by the way, here's the enterprise interface, which will give you a really nice product also to introduce blockchain without that having to be crypto. And on the crypto side, of course, further development of ICANN and Amaru to get to a multi-client phase. I think that's also going to help towards Ouroboros Lars is definitely also on our agenda as well.
Quite a few things to keep you busy. So and hopefully we'll get to meet in Dubai, and maybe towards the end of the year that we'll do another follow-up podcast like this to see what's the latest. But outside of that, we can look at the identity one. Probably mightn't happen before Dubai now, but maybe after that we could look at one specific on identity and the solutions and what's been worked on there. But anything else before we wrap up here? Any closing thoughts from yourself on Cardano's, the foundation, blockchain in general, or anything like that that we should have covered?
I think the problem with these things is there's so much happening, right? And where do you pick your data? So the last 2 days, I was just at the Crypto Valley Summit, including the Ethereum 10 years anniversary. And it's amazing that I met some people who's been in the crypto space for 10 years, really OGs. And they come over and, they grab me, and I haven't seen them for years. And they're like, right, that Cardano thing, that's amazing, right? The architecture is so great. And we need to get to a stage that more people realize what somebody who's been in the space for 5 to 10 years now sees, right? And to do that, it does require that we do more marketing, but it also requires that we become very focused on a set of use cases which we can replicate. And that's one of the things I'm really looking forward to with the summit, to really nail some partnerships and position some community projects to take over some of those things and run with that and get very successful in a focused industry use case, and live off that going forward. And I'm looking very much forward to seeing, how that's going to extend the breadth and the width of what Cardano can do, not just for a person, not just for a group of people, but for society at large.
Yeah, I think a great way to show what Cardano can do is the projects that are building on it, and giving exposure to them to show this project what they can actually do, and that they're built on Cardano, why they're built on it. And I think that's a really great way to push things forward too. But look, Frederick, thanks very much for your time. As usual here, anyone watching this, please do share it out. Ask questions down below. Give us topics to cover the next time. There is a huge amount of topics. I'm just conscious of keeping it as concise as possible for people to get the information, but we can dive into lots of other topics the next time. Do share it out, and give it a like, subscribe if you're new. And if you're going to Dubai, don't forget the code that was given out here earlier on, and hopefully I'll see some of you there. Frederick, thanks once again, and we'll talk soon.
Certainly. Thank you very much, Paul.
Thanks.